The copper tang of blood mixed with salt and burnt powder hung so thick in the night air that Captain Bloody Jack Mallory tasted iron before he saw the trail that it wasn't the usual reckless spray of battle. This was deliberate, wide crimson smears that glistened like spilled rubies under the sickle moon, leading straight across the scarred deck of the Revenant. Each wet footprint told a story. One boot heel dragging, one desperate palm sliding, one body running out of time. Jack's pulse synced to the slap of waves against the hull. He crouched, fingertips brushing the still warm stain, fresh. Less than 5 minutes fresh. That meant whoever left it was still aboard, maybe watching him right now. A low groan sliced through the creaking rigging. Jack's hand shot to the flintlock at his hip. He followed the sound past overturned crates and splintered railings until the trail ended at the portside scuppers. There, half hidden beneath a tattered naval coat, lay a stranger curled like a broken question mark. Moonlight glazed the man's skin a ghostly blue, but the eyes that flicked open were arctic, sharp, lucid, and startlingly calm. Blood bubbled from a slash that split the stranger's belly from sternum to hip, a wound so deep Jack could see the glisten of intestine. Any other man would be screaming. This one whispered, "Water or blade? Decide quick." The words hit Jack like grape shot. In the space of a heartbeat, he saw the fork in the road. 1. Slide a knife between the stranger's ribs, toss the corpse to the circling sharks, and sail south before the Royal Navy scented the kill. 2. Bind the wounds of a man who, in 6 hours' time, might stand trial for piracy, or worse, might stand at Jack's own throat with the same knife. Jack's crew had already gathered in the shadows, cutlasses half drawn, waiting for the captain's word. They weren't surgeons. They were sharks in human skin, and every second Jack hesitated, the Revenant drifted closer to the reef line where British patrols prowled like hungry wolves. A gust of wind snapped the black flag overhead, the skull and crossbones grinning as if in on the joke. Jack knelt, ripped a strip from his own shirt, and pressed it against the wound. The stranger's blood soaked through instantly, hot and sticky against Jack's palm. "Hold him steady?" Jack barked. Two deckhands lunged forward, eyes wide with disbelief. They'd followed Jack through storms and mutinies, but they'd never seen him risk the ship for a stranger. The stranger's lips moved again, barely audible. "Elias Whitlock, surgeon. They'll hang me if you don't." Jack's world tilted. A naval surgeon aboard a pirate vessel? That was a death sentence for both of them if the Admiralty ever found out. But it was also a lifeline. Jack's crew had lost half their number to infection last year because no one knew how to saw off a leg without killing the patient. Thunder rumbled low on the horizon. Not weather, cannon fire, distant, but closing. Jack's head snapped toward the sound. A lantern flare bloomed on the crest of the nearest wave. Red, then white, Royal Navy signal code. They had 30 minutes, maybe less, before the frigate rounded the headland. Jack locked eyes with the dying man. "Save you now, you save me later. Deal?" A ghost of a smile touched Elias's lips. "Deal." Jack rose, voice cutting through the salt wind. "Get the surgeon's kit, rum, and every scrap of clean linen. Move." The crew scattered. As torches flared to life and the ship's bell began to toll, Jack took one last look at the blood trail disappearing beneath the tide. Somewhere out there, the Navy was coming, somewhere closer. The sharks circled. Inside his chest, the impossible choice crystallized. Save the enemy who might become the only man alive who could keep Jack from bleeding out when the real war began. Or let the sea have him and sail away clean. Right now. No second chances. Tell me in the comments. Would you risk your entire crew for a stranger who wears your enemy's coat? The clock is already ticking. Jack hauled Elias Whitlock below deck like a sack of wet sand, each footfall leaving a fresh red print on the warped planking. The surgeon's breathing had thinned to a reedy whistle, the kind that warned death was sharpening its blade in the next room. Lanterns swung overhead, casting shadows that looked like gallows. Below, the Revenant's makeshift infirmary was little more than a reeking storeroom lined with rum casks and rat-gnawed hammocks. The air hung thick with tar, sweat, and the sickly sweet stink of gangrene from a previous patient Jack had dumped overboard 3 nights earlier. The crew hovered in the doorway, cutlasses half drawn, eyes glittering like coins tossed into a wishing well. "Water's boilin', Captain," muttered Briggs, the boatswain, thrusting forward a blackened kettle. Steam curled up like accusing fingers. Jack slit Elias's blood-sodden coat with a dagger, revealing the wound in all its obscene glory. A 6-inch canyon carved just beneath the ribs, edges puckered like a second grin, intestine glinted, pink and obscene, against the lantern glow. The surgeon's own hand tried to push it back inside, a futile, almost polite gesture. Jack's stomach lurched. He'd spilled his share of blood, but never held a man's life in his palms like wet clay. Elias's eyes fluttered open, focusing with unnatural clarity. "You've got 3 minutes before I bleed out, Captain. Choose." The choice reared up like a reef in fog. 1. Stitch the wound and risk keeping a Royal Navy surgeon aboard. A man who knew every secret of the Revenant's hidden coves and powder stores. 2. Let nature take its course. Roll him into the sea, scrub the deck, and sail south before the fleet caught their scent. Jack's fingers twitched toward the pistol tucked in his belt. Elias caught the motion and smiled. Actually smiled through cracked lips. "Kill me now, and you'll still need me tomorrow when that musket ball in your thigh turns green." The words hit like grape shot. Jack had forgotten the shard of Spanish iron lodged near his femur. The one that throbbed every time the weather changed. It was a time bomb ticking in his own flesh. "Rum," Jack barked. Briggs splashed amber liquid over the wound. Elias hissed but didn't scream. The crew watched, silent now, as Jack threaded a sail needle with catgut. His hands shook. He'd sewn sails, not souls, but Elias's voice steadied him. "Cross-stitch, not running knot. Pull tight. If I pass out, keep going." Outside, wind howled through the rigging like a banshee chorus. Jack could feel the ship drifting. Helmsman dead in the last skirmish, compass shattered, stars hidden behind storm cloud. Every second spent below was a second closer to the reef. A lantern sputtered, casting Elias's face in hellish red. "Why'd you refuse to cut that boy's leg off?" Jack asked, buying time. "Because he was 12 and wanted to be a fiddler," Elias rasped. "They hanged me for disobedience. Your noose or theirs. Same rope, different day." Jack's needle paused mid-stitch. The moral math tilted. Save this man and maybe earn a surgeon who'd refuse no one, including Jack himself when the fever came. Or finish the job the Navy started and sail away clean, but with a rotting leg and a crew who'd seen their captain abandon mercy. A bell clanged overhead, 3 sharp notes that meant land sighted. Jack's head snapped up. Through the porthole he glimpsed the faint loom of a lantern on the headland. Royal Navy patrol, or worse, a traitor among his own signaling their position. Elias read the panic in Jack's eyes. "Cut me loose and I'll disappear into the hold. No one needs to know I'm here." His voice was steady, but the offer was laced with steel. "Trust me, or kill me." Jack's hands moved without permission, knotting the final stitch. Blood still seeped, slower now, but the wound gaped like an open mouth. He grabbed a flask of rum, poured a measure down Elias's throat, then took a burning gulp himself. "Deal's changed," Jack said. "You save my life someday, I keep yours tonight. But one wrong move." He drew the pistol, laid it on Elias's chest like a promise. "And I finished the job myself." Elias's laugh was a wet rattle. "Fair bargain, pirate." Above deck, the lookout screamed, this time in panic. Cannons boomed in the distance, close enough to feel the ship quiver. Jack bolted up the companionway, leaving Elias propped against a blood-stained crate, pistol within reach. The choice wasn't made. It had only begun. In less than 10 minutes Jack would either be a captain with a surgeon worth his weight in gold, or a corpse floating under a black flag no one would ever salute again. "Tell me, right now, would you have stitched that wound or let the sea claim him?" The next broadside is already on its way. The storm broke like a broadside at dawn. Black clouds slammed into the Revenant with cannon-weight rain, turning deck planks into skating rinks of salt and blood. Jack clung to the wheel, shouting orders that were swallowed by wind, when the Spanish galleon appeared out of the mist like a ghost ship forged from smoke and vengeance. Musket fire crackled. Jack felt the ball punch into his thigh a heartbeat before he heard the report. A hot, wet impact that spun him sideways. His leg buckled. The world tilted. He hit the deck hard enough to rattle his teeth, blood erupting from the torn artery in crimson arcs that matched the rhythm of the storm. Elias Whitlock appeared through sheets of rain, hair plastered to his skull, coat flapping like a wounded gull. For one surreal second Jack saw their roles reversed. the pirate bleeding out, the surgeon kneeling beside him with a face carved from stone. "Press here?" Elias barked, shoving Jack's own hand against the wound. The pressure sent lightning up Jack's spine. Above them, the mainmast groaned, a sound like a giant's death rattle. If it snapped, the toppling spars would finish what the Spanish ball had started. Jack's vision tunneled. He could feel his pulse in the wound, each beat pumping more life into the scuppers. "Leave me," he rasped. "Save the ship." Elias's answer was a savage grin. "Told you I'd save your life someday. Didn't say it'd be convenient." Lightning blanched the sky. For one heartbeat Jack saw the surgeon's eyes, blue and burning, the same eyes that had watched British officers sign execution orders. Then Elias was moving, tearing a strip from Jack's shirt, twisting it into a tourniquet above the wound. His hands were steady despite the deck heaving like a panicked horse. "Need heat to seal it," Elias muttered. "Briggs! Torch!" The bosun staggered over, soaked to the bone, thrusting a flaming brand. Elias held the blade in the flame until it glowed orange, then pressed it against Jack's thigh. The smell of scorched flesh mingled with gunpowder. Jack's scream was lost in thunder. Through the haze of pain he heard Elias counting. 10 pulses. 9. 8. Each count matched the slowing gush of blood at a T3. The crimson stream thinned to a trickle at T1. The world steadied. Jack blinked rain from his lashes. Elias knelt over him, rain streaking down his face like tears. "Debt repaid," Jack croaked. "Half," Elias said. "You still need to stand." Jack laughed, a broken sound that turned into a cough. "Storm's not done with us yet." As if summoned by the words, a wave crashed over the rail, slamming them both against the mast. At Jack's leg flared white-hot. But the tourniquet held. He hauled himself upright using Elias's shoulder as leverage. "Wheels unmanned," Elias shouted over the wind. Ships drifting toward the reef. Jack squinted through the downpour. Jagged rocks loomed like dragon teeth less than a cable length away. Another 10 minutes and the Revenant would be splinters. He took one step. Pain lanced from thigh to teeth, but the leg held. Elias slipped beneath Jack's arm, taking half his weight. Together they staggered toward the helm. The crew parted like waves, eyes wide at the sight. The pirate captain leaning on the man he'd once saved, both limping toward disaster. Jack gripped the wheel. Elias braced beside him, hands steady on Jack's hip to keep weight off the wounded leg. "Port 5 degrees," Elias called. Reading the waves, Jack spun the wheel. The ship groaned, timbers shrieking as she answered sluggishly. Another musket ball whined past, close enough to part Jack's hair. Elias didn't flinch. "Hold course. Reef in 20 lengths." Jack's thigh throbbed in time with his heartbeat. He could feel warm blood seeping anew, but the tourniquet bought minutes. "Why didn't you run?" he muttered. "Could have taken the longboat." Elias's grin flashed white in the stormlight. "And missed the look on your face when you realized I was right about the debt?" The reef loomed closer, spray exploding over the bowsprit. Jack's knuckles whitened on the wheel. Elias's hand tightened on his shoulder. "Steady. Half a point more. Now!" The Revenant lurched, keel scraping coral with a sound like tearing metal. Then, freedom, open water ahead, the galleon lost in the squall behind them. Jack sagged against the wheel, breath ragged. Elias eased him down to the deck, fingers probing the wound. Bleeding slowed. "You'll live, if infection doesn't finish what the Spanish started." Jack laughed until it hurt. "Still half a debt document." Elias met his eyes, deadly serious. "Then I'll collect when we face the next broadside." "Fair." Jack extended a blood-streaked hand. "Fair." They clasped forearms, pirate and surgeon, bound by scars and storms. Above them, the black flag snapped triumphant in the wind, and somewhere in the distance another cannon boomed. Not in pursuit, but in warning of battles yet to come. Tell me in the comments. Would you trust the man who just cauterized your wound to stand beside you when the next ship opens fire? Because the next broadside is already loading. The Revenant drifted into the fog like a ghost that had forgotten how to haunt. Beyond the veil, the HMS Dauntless sat broadside ready, 32 black muzzles yawning at the pirate's ribs. From her quarterdeck, Captain Horace Morrison, Elias Whitlock's former commander, lifted a speaking trumpet. His voice cut the hush like a slow saber. "Surrender the pirate Mallory and the traitor Surgeon. You have 5 minutes before I reduce your hull to driftwood." Jack felt every second land like a hammer on the anvil of his pulse. The deck beneath him was slick with new rain and older blood. His thigh, still bound by Elias's tourniquet, throbbed in sync with the swell around him. 28 pirates waited, cutlasses loose in scabbards, eyes flicking between their captain and the man who had once worn the king's coat. Elias stood at Jack's left, knuckles white around a surgeon's satchel that now held more than scalpels inside. Wrapped in oilskin lay Morrison's signed orders. Proof that the Navy captain had torched a neutral port to lure Jack into open water. One sheaf of paper that could hang Morrison from his own yardarm, if it reached the Admiralty. But the Dauntless blocked every route to open sea, and her guns were loaded with chain shot designed to shred sails. Then flesh. 5 minutes. Jack tasted iron where he'd bitten through the inside of his cheek. He turned to Elias. "Take the longboat. Slip astern while I keep him talking. You reach Kingston. Those orders will end Morrison faster than any broadside." Elias's jaw tightened. "And leave you to the noose? I didn't cauterize your leg just to watch you dance on air." Behind them, the helmsman whispered the obvious. The longboat wouldn't clear the frigate's wake before the first salvo tore it to splinters. Jack's options crystallized: brutal, simple, terrible. 1. Surrender himself and Elias, trusting that Morrison, who had already murdered civilians, would keep his word and spare the crew. 2. Fight to the last man, guaranteeing a massacre but denying Morrison the spectacle of a scaffold. 3. Ignite the powder magazine and blow the Revenant to atoms, taking the Dauntless and every soul aboard both ships into the deep. Morrison's voice cracked across the water again. For minutes, Jack's gaze swept his crew. Faces weathered by sun and betrayal, each one with a price on his head. They deserved better than a coward's surrender. But they deserved better, too, than a suicide blaze. Elias stepped forward, voice pitched low. "There's a fourth choice." He slipped a sealed vial from his satchel. Dark liquid that shimmered like oil beneath the storm-gray sky. Yellow fever serum. Morrison's own stock. 1 drop in his brandy and he's bedridden in a week. Long enough for us to slip past the blockade. Jack stared. "Poison." "Justice," Elias corrected. "Same death he planned for innocence, but it means sending you aboard under parley flag. Alone." Jack laughed, a sound edged with broken glass. "Walk onto his deck unarmed? He'll clap me in irons before the bottle's uncorked." Elias met his eyes. "Then we all swing together." The silence that followed was heavier than gunpowder. 3 minutes, Morrison called, trumpet metallic with impatience. Rain began to fall, thin needles hissing on hot iron. Jack felt the weight of every soul aboard settle on his shoulders like wet canvas. He pictured the scaffold, the snap of rope, the slow dance at rope's end. He pictured the magazine erupting. Fire climbing the shrouds, sails burning like paper saints. He pictured Morrison's face twisted in fever, justice delivered without a single cannon fired. Choice upon choice, each more bitter than the last. 2 minutes. A voice cracked from the rigging, one of the younger powder monkeys, barely 15. "Captain, we'll follow you to hell if you ask it, but tell us which hell before the clock runs out." Jack's heart hammered so hard he felt it in the wound on his thigh that he looked at Elias, then at the crew, then at the dark mouths of the waiting cannons. 1 minute. Jack drew a slow breath that tasted of salt and gun smoke. That he stepped to the rail, raising both hands. Not in surrender, but in parley. His voice carried across the water, steady as a drumbeat. "Captain Morrison, I'll come aboard with terms. But hear this, harm a hair on any head here, and the orders I carry burn with me. Let one shot fire, and every admiral in the Caribbean learns why you chased a ghost into this fog." Morrison's silhouette stiffened. The trumpet lowered. A hush fell so complete Jack heard the distant clink of rigging on the Dauntless, heard his own pulse thundering in his ears. Elias pressed the vial into Jack's palm. "One swallow," he whispered. "Or one spark. Your call." Jack closed his fist around the glass. The deck beneath him felt suddenly fragile. A thin plank stretched between two abysses. He took the first step toward the rail, and the world held its breath. For the length of 3 heartbeats, the world narrowed to the glass vial sweating in Jack's fist and the 30 yards of black water between the Revenant and the Dauntless. Then the fog itself seemed to exhale, and the silence cracked open like a pistol shot. A single musket flared on the frigate's forecastle. No ball, only the brief orange bloom of a warning shot, and Captain Morrison's voice lashed across the gap. Parley granted. 1 man. Unarmed. Step lively, pirate. Jack felt the deck tilt beneath him, not from the swell but from the weight of every pair of eyes boring into his back. He slid the vial into his coat pocket, the glass warm as fresh-drawn blood against his ribs. "Hold fire until you see my signal," he murmured to Elias without turning. "If you see no signal, sink the bastard and sail west." Elias's reply was a ghost of a smile. "Signal or no, I'll come for you. Count on it." Jack stepped over the rail and dropped into the longboat. 4 strokes later, he was climbing the dauntless ladder, hands raised, boots squelching on mahogany polished for admirals, not pirates. Morian waited beneath the quarterdeck awning, coat immaculate despite the rain, a silver tray bearing 2 crystal glasses and a decanter of amber rum already set between them. "Your health, Captain Mallory," Morrison poured with the grace of a man who had poisoned before. "Or should I say, your last health?" Jack's gaze flicked to the decanter's mouth, thin red residue on the lip, the same shade as the fever serum, so the doctor's vial was not the only poison in play. A smile tugged at Jack's mouth. "Funny thing about last drinks?" he answered, lifting the glass. "They taste sweeter when the devil you're toasting thinks he's already won." He tipped the rum to his lips but did not swallow, letting the liquid burn against his tongue while Morrison's pupils widened with the hunger of a man watching a fly walk into a web. Jack spat the rum back into the glass and set it down untouched. From his coat he drew, not the vial, but a folded parchment sealed in wax. Morrison's own seal. The orders Morrison had signed to torch the neutral port, now smeared with rain and Jack's blood. "1 copy sails to Kingston with a fast cutter the moment my ship fires a signal," Jack said quietly. "Another rests in a bottle lashed to the corpse of your 2nd lieutenant, floating toward Havana even as we speak." Morrison's face drained to the color of wet ash. Behind him, the Marine escort shifted, uncertainty rippling through polished ranks. Jack leaned in, voice pitched for Morrison alone. "Call your men off, let the Revenant pass, and this stays between us. 1 shot fired, and every admiral from Port Royal to Tortuga learns why you needed a scapegoat." For a heartbeat, the only sound was the clink of rigging against spars. Then Morrison's hand moved. Not to his pistol, but to the decanter. He upended it over the rail, rum spiraling into the sea like molten gold. "Lower the guns," he called. "Let them go." The command rang hollow, but the crews obeyed, iron mouths dropping like obedient hounds. Jack felt the deck beneath him steady, the fog suddenly breathable again. He turned to leave, but Morrison's final whisper snagged at his coat. "This isn't over, Mallory. The Admiralty wants more than my head. They want the legend, and legends don't sail away clean." Jack paused at the rail, grinning through salt-crusted lips. "Then they'd better learn to swim." He dropped back into the longboat, oars biting water, the Dauntless shrinking behind veils of mist as he climbed aboard the Revenant. Elias met him with raised brows and a half-smile. "No poison, no powder?" Jack flicked the vial into the sea. It vanished with a tiny splash. Turns out the cure was the wound itself. Behind them, the fog swallowed Morrison's silhouette, but Jack knew the captain's warning would follow like a second shadow. The crew cheered, but the sound felt thin against the quiet certainty gathering in Jack's chest. He limped to the wheel, thigh throbbing in time with the swell, and set course for open water. Elias appeared at his side, pressing a fresh bandage into Jack's palm. "Next time it won't be words that stop the guns," he said. "Next time it'll be blood." Jack met his gaze, the storm in his eyes matching the one on the horizon. "Then let's make sure it's theirs."